Okay, so coming to the discussions or the acronym terminology that you should be aware of while dealing, or communicating with your design teams, you should be aware of the following terminologies. So the first one is called usually like the mocks. Are the mocks you'll often hear like are the mocks ready from your senior leadership team? You'll hear like the mock is in progress, mocks are work in progress, whatever, right? What are these mocks that the design team keeps on, referring to in their communication? I think it is essentially a replication, a product replication, which is built out to get the feedback. You could use this to get the feedback from let's say, your external, customers. Some, for example, that you might be, okay to take this and share this flow and then get their general feedback. You could document that feedback, right? Or you could show it internally to different PMs, right? You could also maybe if you are comfortable and your customer success teams are, you could probably also take it to them and just show that this is something how we are trying to develop feature. uh, a sense of, I think, mocks is to understand uh, certain maybe steps, for example, that are necessary, and the getting rid of the steps that are unnecessary. That is, what these mocks help you with, right? You'll also hear terms like UI and UX, right? What is this UI and UX? I mean, user interface and user experience. I think what that is what it translates to. Uh, Essentially, what it means is that how are your end users going to use the product? What is the visual experience going to look like, right? So if you have, let's say, an app, right? An app could basically, uh, have, let's say, a page, right? A simple page that has, on the first step, asks you for your username and maybe the password, right? So where do you place the logo, for example? Where do you place the next button? Where do you place the uh, maybe any sort of background image, right? All of that is essentially UI UX. You will also think about the color of these buttons, the shape of these buttons, the text that goes inside these buttons, right? All of that is actually part of the UI UX, visual experience. Coming to, I think, the third part, which is the third acronym or terminology, set of terminology that you should be aware of, is the user design product flow. And what does it mean? Is essentially steps that a user takes to perform, a desired outcome, right? And what do you mean by that desired outcome? Essentially, what it means is, let's say I am on a shopping app, right? Uh, what are some of the steps that I need to, you know, place an order, let's say, right? I am on a shopping app, so my end goal is to basically place an order. What are the steps or the flow of those steps, and how should it look like, right? I should be definitely be able to log in as a number one step. I should be able to do a selection of the product as my next step. I should be able to do a checkout of the products that I've selected, and finally I should be able to place an order. I have simplified it to a very large extent, but you get the concept. The flow is essentially there to take you as a user from this state, which could be a state A, to your final desired state, which is getting the order delivered, right? So selecting the order, checking out the order, placing the order, right? All of these are different components or different steps to actually take you to the final desired outcome, right? uh, there are other, I think, terminologies that can be used with the design teams, but probably not as much. For example, prototypes, design prototypes. Uh, if you are very tool specific, then you could hear things of the nature like Figma prototypes or Balsamic prototypes. right? Screens, icons, floating icons, widgets, textual appearances, things of that nature, right? I think so. This is, just a starting point to get you familiar. There will be obviously a much more detailed level of interaction with your design teams, but I would suggest that don't hesitate to ask questions to your design team because they are the subject matter expertise. And I think you can definitely uh, go through documentation of Figma, for example, if you're like really interested, or to like Balsamic wireframing tools to understand what is uh, meant by prototyping, for example, or what is meant by developing prototypes and developing mocks, right? You'll get a better sense of more terminologies. Now, coming to the final part of terminologies, what are some of the terminologies that the product uses with the, I would say, let's say the other product managers, or let's say even with customers, or let's say the customer facing teams. And these are, I think, terminologies that, you know, other teams or other product managers would definitely be aware of. So when you say, for example, an MVP, right, a minimum viable product, what does it mean? It essentially means like a barely functional product to kind of generate a user feedback. Uh, when I say, for example, a barely minimal or like a barely functional product, it means that I am not trying to develop the product completely, but I am trying to give you the basic level of functionalities so that I am able to understand whether this product or the set of features of this product are at least useful to you or not useful to you. Right? I'm trying to generate some insights instead of developing the full-fledged product and then waiting for the feedback and discarding the entire product, right? So it's kind of like, you could say a step to develop your final product. You would have heard of terms like 0 to 1. You don't reach the state of 1 until you have your MVP. An MVP could be, in some cases, your zeroth state. It could be a state in between 0 to 1. But essentially, it is never the final state itself. It's kind of an evolving state that takes the feedback from your end user, incorporates that feedback, and then moves on to the next state, right? Now, coming to the second one, which is called the acceptance criteria, I think it is important that your let's say the MVP or some version of the iterated product gets you know tested out in an environment, let's say a testing environment, and it is predominantly important to use these, let's say, test cases to try out the product before it is handed over to the customers. So you will have to have a set of specific criteria that are called the acceptance criteria before you actually hand it over to the customer or a set of customers, right? Essentially, you are preparing the set of features for your beta launch. You can have alpha launches, you can have beta launches, you could have test launches or like staging launches. There are a lot of, I think, terminologies that are used, but essentially acceptance criteria are set by the PM to help test out, I think, cases so that the product is passed for a launch. Um, Testing and staging launches are like, essentially for your for your subset of users. Only a selected set of users do like, a launch. It could be related to a lot of things that you want to test out in the product. It could be related to the functionality, latencies, system loads to be checked, right? Depends on what the outcome is of that launch. You could do a staging launch selectively, for a few set of customer. And then I think customer feedback is something that product uses a lot. uh, I think customer feedback is probably the most easiest and the simplest of these acronyms that you might have learned, throughout. But essentially, I think feedback is an ongoing, I would say, a series of steps. you have to always capture the customer feedback to improve your MVP. Right? You have to take the customer feedback to maybe even get your MVP to the final launch state. Right? You have launch states basically depending on where your product is, but you could have launch states, like your MVP launch state, or like your staging launch, or you could have like your final launch. Each of these stages you could take a customer feedback and you incorporate that customer feedback to kind of improve the product or the set of features in the product, right? So I think you got some idea of what are the acronyms that are useful. Do let me know. I think if you want a similar set or a part 2 of these acronyms, and also please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.